Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you're in, whenever you are watching this. I am super excited. This is a topic that's been brewing for quite a while now, and I'm especially excited because I have a very special guest that's going to be co-presenting this with me. No, it's just me talking to myself about this topic, but now actually I've got a friend. So, without further ado, Joanne, I'm going to pass it to you to do a quick intro.
All right. Thank you for that intro, and thanks to AvePoint for inviting me to join in on today's webinar. My name is Joanne Klein. I'm a Microsoft MVP in security and M365. I own my own consulting company, and I work with customers day in and day out on the Microsoft Purview suite of solutions, which, we're going to talk about some of them today, obviously. So happy to be here. And I just want to give a big shout out to my favorite holiday place, which is that bottom picture you see on the right. That is Waterton National Park in Alberta, Canada. So it's one of my favorite places to be. So thanks for having me. Looking forward to the next hour or so.
Awesome, thank you. And because Joanne is wicked humble and she won't, talk about how famous she is. So I've known Joanne
Oh,
for a very long time, and I managed to sneak in a slide
wow,
that
that's
she wasn't
going
aware.
back a ways.
So this is how I know Joanne Klein. Joanne Klein had logged a user profile service problem that I had run into at my former company, and I started following her because she put out really great content. So again, I don't want to ignore the date because I'm now feeling a little bit nostalgic, but yeah, Joanne, I really appreciate you making time. I think, today's session is gonna be a lot of fun, and I could not do this without you. So thank
Well,
you, thank you, thank you.
thank you so much. Wow, user profile service. I haven't thought about that one in a very long time, thank
You and me
goodness.
both. I mean, so again, you're like, who's this talking head? So my name is Jared Mappis. I'm a solutions architect with AvePoint. Like Joanne, I am a Microsoft MVP. I'm focused more on Copilot and Copilot enablement. Because I'm a Copilot connoisseur, I've written a couple books. One was on Microsoft 365 Copilot, now how to introduce that to your workplace, as well as what just came out last week is Copilot Studio and get started with that. So if you love to read
Nice.
books, there's a couple out there. My wife and I love to travel, and we have two French bulldogs, which I'm very surprised one is not in the background right now. That typically like to sleep back there. So that's just a little about me. Yeah, as a quick plug too, besides just me, AvePoint, huge thanks to them for helping to sponsor this webinar. AvePoint is a data security company focused on helping create structure out of that really pesky unstructured data. I was formerly a customer. We've been around for 20 plus years, Microsoft partner. So again, thank you to AvePoint for giving us the infrastructure to help put
Mm,
on today's webinar. So the why behind this, actually, sorry, the what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about the why behind this topic, which is super important because again, everyone's has AI as this catalyst of, we need to do something. It's this big compelling event. We need to get our arms around all this oversharing in our tenant and make sure that our environments are secure before we go ahead and invest in AI. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about sort of AvePoint Purview in the lens of sort of getting ready for AI, and then
mm,
a little bit around operationalizing AI. And as Joanne mentioned, Purview, AvePoint, these are huge topics, huge platforms, and we won't cover all the use cases, but kind of just enough so you get a feel for how they build on top of each other and where they complement each other. So that is really the core focus of today's presentation. And with that, let's kind of like hop into the why behind it. So I kind of alluded to it, right? So, um, AI is this big, compelling event. If you've not heard the word Copilot, then honestly, that's a failure of your Microsoft account team. They just haven't talked to you about that yet, but don't worry, it's coming. But really, why it matters is, and it's data and privacy and security is just paramount when you think about bringing and introducing a new technology, new capability like Copilot or even with agents. And even Microsoft's own documentation really highlights the fact that these models don't or not even the models, these services, they don't have it come with additional access. They respect the access of
yeah.
the users. But as you can imagine, when you go through the paradigm shift of on-prem file shares to the cloud, where everyone is a owner, it's a little bit challenging to wrangle the permissions. So again, this is what kind of why this tends to be kind of critical path for for a lot of organizations. And as a quick plug, kind of like who is this presentation for? It's a little bit for everybody. So if you're a current customer at AvePoint, amazing, right? Here's how your investment is going to help you get ready for AI. It's also for Microsoft account teams. If you're like, who's this AvePoint? Who's AvePoint people? Where like why are they talking about data security? What helped you all to understand where there's the intersection? Also, obviously potential customers and some of our partners. So again, this content is really is complementary. So the intent is to help educate, inform, and help you all solve those difficult problems that are perhaps kind of blocking you from moving forward with Copilot. Okay. So with that, and Mark, Jen, this might be a fun one for us to kind of talk through like the value of Purview. Actually, I'll let you speak to it because you're gonna probably speak to it a little bit better than I would. So again, I'll
Sure. Yeah. Well, Microsoft Purview approaches this kind of at a holistic, from a holistic perspective. It's not just one solution that's going to solve all of your problems. It's basically a bunch of them that work together to be able to improve your compliance all up and your data, I guess, protection all up across your organization. So many of these things are just good things to do even outside of AI. Let's just be clear on that. Purview's been around for a lot longer than some of these AI tools. So these are things that, you should have been probably thinking about beforehand, and you probably already have some of these things in place, starting with classification. That is the most important fundamental piece of many of the follow-on controls. Data loss prevention and insider risk management is really looking at how to enforce some controls right where end users are working and moving the data around and the activity they're doing with it. Dealing with the governance of that data lifecycle management, getting rid of that rot data, redundant, obsolete, and trivial, managing your records of value. And then, of course, e-discovery and audit is kind of the oversight on what's going on there, dealing with litigations, internal investigations, that kind of thing. And then DSPM for AI is a relatively new solution in Purview that can really have oversight on activities that your end users are doing with an AI perspective, and then how that ties into many of these other Purview solutions. So it's tackling this kind of end to end. No one thing can solve it all, but they work quite well together.
awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Joanne. Yeah, that definitely I couldn't have said that better. So I appreciate you doing that for me.
That was off the top of my head.
No, you're good. Yeah, we've practiced this a little bit. So I will say too, so they might be like, all right, so Purview does a ton. Like, where's there room for opportunity? And it's really AvePoint, you know, while Purview will surface where the risk exists from sort of a remediation perspective, there are opportunities, and that's really where AvePoint has found our foothold. Like really be able to orchestrate remediation, capture business context as to what things are, why they matter, the purpose of it, and then enforcing lifecycle management across containers has really been our bread and butter. Again, I was a customer back in 2013. I have seen this platform evolve over time, and yeah, I've seen firsthand how it can help. So, got a little bit about Purview, a little about Outpoint. Let's actually talk about preparing for AI and sort of what that all looks like and why that even potentially even matters to some degree. So, there's a big chunk of these Copilot pilots or Copilot test flights, as I like to call them, that are failing to move past pilots. And it's not so much a Copilot problem. Obviously, if you have feedback about Copilot, that's a great thing to bring up to your account team. But what we're really seeing, though, out in the field are concerns around, data quality. And if you're asking Copilot a question, it grounds a response on outdated information. Like that is kind of a bummer. People will start to not trust Copilot, the capability, might think, hey, like this is not worth the money. Yeah, as you can imagine, too, managing security at scale. So, we talk about
Mm.
permissions, and Copilot respects the permissions at the individual file level and at the user level. The challenge, though, is sometimes those permissions are not quite correct, and therefore there's lots of examples of overexposure, oversharing within a lot of organizations, and that creates some concern, especially when you're talking about regulated industries. And talk about regulated industries, ensuring compliance with, again, how how people are using this technology, their access to data, et cetera, this becomes a little bit more complicated. And as you also can imagine, this is not cheap. This
Yeah.
technology comes with a price tag and it is not always incorporated into your IT budget. So it's super important
Yeah.
to be able to demonstrate ROI. And that tends to sort of stall out some of these projects. So we'll talk a little bit about how do we unblock some of these impediments to enable you to scale to your organization. I'm a simple guy. I like to talk about like what you should care about. Keep it there. Just gotta break down. When we're talking about Copilot, there's a huge focus on you need to solve for the data and manage that data that Copilot will be accessing. And then when it comes to agents, it's really about managing both that data that's all access to, but really managing the life cycle of
Mm.
those agents. So again, kind of framing up some things that you might want to care about as you're thinking about introducing, Copilot and agents to your organization. And because I come from consulting, I love frameworks. I think frameworks help make the world go round. And this is something that I've been noticing is common across a lot of customers that I work with. And I've built this framework based on sort of the activities I see. And I've called this not marketing approved just yet. I'm sure it'll be any day now, but from readiness to confidence,
Mhm.
where like AI readiness follows the steps of discovery, understanding current state, remediating those problems of oversharing, addressing data quality, and enforcing workspace management. Evolving from readiness is confidence. So it's all about, monitoring the interactions between users and AI. It's addressing external user access because again, data security, data cleanup projects are not like the most compelling and exciting. People don't go, "Wow, let's throw a bunch of money after at that." They really want to focus on new technology, new innovation. So while you have the focus, while you have the investment, it's a perfect time to address your external users and the access that they have. I don't say what I'm observing is after you bring in this Gen AI as a service, these co-pilots, there's a huge appetite within organizations to start building out agents. And agents is yet another opportunity to introduce risk between
Yeah.
sprawl, unauthorized access, and et cetera. So planning for that, preparing for that, having some governance around that is super important.
Yeah.
And then finally, operationalizing AI is about really measuring and ensuring that you are getting the true return on your investment to make further investments.
Mhm.
So I think, Joe, we're gonna like kind of jump into these. I think we'll start with AI readiness. We'll see how much content we can kind of get
Yeah.
through, knowing that there's a lot here. So yeah, I think let's kind of right, we'll dive into maybe AI readiness. See what we discover. So speaking of readiness, it does start with discovery. It is
Mhm.
understand the current state, right, of your oversharing and overexposure in your tenant.
Yeah.
What you know, how much you'll probably have, right? It's about remediating that, actually proactively doing that. Hopefully not through, manual contact of managers and owners and all that, but
Mhm.
actually through automation, because that's really the way that
Yeah.
you'll solve this, right? Especially in bigger organizations. Data quality, again, is super critical path to make sure that not only do you address the responses that AI will ground off of, but just the fact that addressing data quality can also help with remediation.
Yes.
And then finally, once we've cleaned up our house, it's all about workspace management and ensuring that you don't keep teams forever or sites forever. Just keep them as long as they're adding value to your organization. So, as a quick recap, so I'm gonna kind of tee up Joanne because she can do an amazing demo. But when we talk about doing discovery, again, it's confirming where you have sensitive data. We all have it. You have it. We have
Mhm.
it. Every organization has it. But it's really about pinpointing where that data is overexposed and building a plan to remediate. So, Joanne, I will pass it to you because I think you are going to take us through a super cool walk and talk of Microsoft Purview and how Purview helps.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. That really tees up the idea of data classification inside of your Microsoft or across your Microsoft 365 environment and looking at where your data is and what kind of sensitive content may be out there. And this is shown to you inside of Purview in the Data Explorer view, which you can get out in a couple of places. This screen is just showing in information protection. So um, if you want to click the next screen, what Data Explorer tells you or has insight on is across a number of different workload locations of Microsoft 365. You can see them there on the right-hand side, as well as Copilot interactions. Where is sensitive data found across across those locations? And that process is kind of done through data classification. That is the foundational underpinning to everything. Your data must be properly classified so you know where sensitive data may be. This is not a new AI concept. This has been around for a long time, and all of the or many of the purview controls rely on an accurate classification of information. That doesn't mean a sensitivity label. A sensitivity label can be applied to something that's classified a certain way, but classification is saying, oh, we found a credential type in this Word document, or we maybe found a social security number or a credit card number, and indicating all of that metadata, the sensitive information type you might have found. There's like over 300 of them or over 400 of them built in, comes with Microsoft. You can, of course, build your own custom ones, which many of my customers do. Once you've defined these, then it detects where those things are in your content. And it has a whole bunch of information, the confidence of them, how many it found, all of those very important details are um, stored. And then you can apply a sensitivity label or a data loss prevention policy or an insider risk management policy based on them. So this is a bird's eye view that's updated to show you it's not an up to the minute update. It takes sometimes a few days for this to reflect actual reality. So it's just a point in time snapshot that's updated over time. But it does tell you, based on the sensitive information type, where that's found, or once you do apply a label, where those labels are applied across all of these places. So it tells a pretty important story for you to kind of be in here and monitoring for where sensitive information might be found across your organization. So one place to do this, certainly, and you can filter in and you can, if you click SharePoint, I think that's one of these locations, you can actually see in this case, there is uh, based on, in this case, if we've selected all medical terms and conditions, that's a built-in sensitive information type inside Purview. And what this is showing on the right-hand side is all of the sites where that is found. Now, you might be saying, that has nothing to do with our data, but it did find a match. All of the sensitive information types are scanned in your environment, whether it's a true match for data that you're concerned about or not. It does them all. So it would be, incumbent upon you to, let's say, dig into this community site that's being highlighted and, dig into those 17 items where Purview is telling you we have found a match on all medical terms and conditions in 17 of those files. Now, that might be a risk for you, or it might not be a risk for you. So the work comes in trying to figure out, well, what is risky and what isn't, and what do we have to apply another purview control on to help mitigate that risk. Um, Now that's can be an overwhelming task, particularly in a large and busy tenant. So one of the new capabilities that Microsoft has introduced to help prioritize and focus your efforts in this area is in the Data Security Posture Management for AI, or I will now call it DSPM for AI solution. Within there, there's something called a data risk assessment, which I really like because it takes the default assessment, looks at the activity across your sites and picks the top 100 busiest ones as far as usage goes and gives you insight on, okay, what's going on in here? And is it something that you are a little bit concerned about? Remember, this is with an AI lens. So if we look at um, the sensitivity labels on data section on this dashboard, we can see um, it's the data that it has classified, i.e. scanned, some of it is labeled. Um, of all of the sensitive information types that were detected in that data classification, some of it is labeled, probably good. Some of it is not labeled. That could be a potential risk. Um, and then sometimes it doesn't detect any sensitive information at all. So this would indicate to you that probably we need to have more of our content labeled if you were just looking at that, at first blush. And then another point I want to highlight is the item shared with on the right hand side. That those blue bar graph it is telling you what kind of sharing links are given from these sites. Some are going to be risky, and any one link would be very risky. In these 100 sites, none of those exist. But you can see there's a significant number of documents that are shared with people outside your organization. Again, that's another potential oversharing, risky area of your organization. And then you can, of course, drill into each one of these 100 sites and get more granular details. But the takeaway from this is it really helps customers, whether you're using AI or not. It can either help mitigate the risk if you are using AI and focus your efforts on the riskiest sites, or if you're not using AI yet and you're trying to get ready, it at least can say, okay, these sites, we need to focus in on these because potentially they're going to be causing a problem for us. So as the commentary says in the bottom, it really provides a prioritized path for remediation.
Perfect. Awesome. That's right. Yeah, that does seem like a very helpful way to sort
Yeah,
of kind of cut through some of the noise, right? So otherwise you're
exactly.
so
Yeah,
very, very cool. Right on. What I'll do is, yeah, let me hop in sort of to talk about like what we do from an
sure.
AvePoint perspective, how we can take some of those same, learning some of that
Yep.
same visibility into sensitive information and also help from a prioritization perspective. So again, Joy and I are not, we have done this before in terms of presentations. So we're going to keep showing you screenshots versus worrying about demos flaking, but a quick little capture of the AvePoint Confidence Platform. We are able to also tap into, where sensitive information sits within your tenant across SharePoint, across Teams, across OneDrive. Our data is refreshed every day. We connect to your tenant, we scan, we pull out the metadata. And what we've built, which has been pretty well received by a lot of our customers, is this idea of an overall risk. And so what we do is we take those sensitive information types. We allow you to configure in your tenant which sensitive information types matter the most to you,
Ah,
right? Every industry is a little bit different.
yeah.
And therefore, when it comes to sensitive data, you want to define what's like what you're most concerned with. Now, I mentioned before, having sensitive data is not really a problem. As Joanna was showing you kind of before, right? When there might be lots of instances of or lots of documents that have sensitive information in them, but it's really that intersection of sensitive data and a lot of people having access to it
Yeah.
is really where you equal that overexposure. And so we give you a heat map of where you've got that high sensitivity as defined by you, along with high exposure, right? If it's 100 people, if it's 200 people, we're able to give you that heat map to help prioritize where you might want to look to start remediating. So that's, kind of step one as to what we do. And as I mentioned, like the way it is set up, you configure the sensitivity definition and personalize it for you and your organization. So you're not worrying about seeing things that maybe are not quite applicable, and that kind of helps to reduce perhaps some of the false positives where you might not want to focus. But again, this
Mhm.
is a configuration that you can do, with your instance of AvePoint's online services. We also provide visibility into what's probably one of the biggest areas of oversharing is like the large sharing links. Hopefully, you've got anonymous links turned off in your tenant. If not, we'll show you where those are. Or if you see a lot of direct sharing links
Yep.
or links that might be shared externally, which obviously is not a AI problem. But as Joanne has been
Mm.
mentioning, right? Like getting ready for AI is really about having strong data security, data
Yep.
management around your unstructured data in M365. So these are just good practices to have, regardless of if you're just kind of kicking the tires around
Mm.
Copilot or agents, or if you're actually making a large investment in them.
Yep.
And as you can imagine, you can click on any of these links and start to drill down into the details to understand, who shared what access do they have, when that was done, etc. So again, giving you really great visibility into where there potentially is risk in your organization. I'll call it another area which tends to be a honeypot of oversharing in most organizations. And I'm an old school SharePoint nerd, been in that space for a bit. And with Microsoft Teams, which is the collaboration hub, the architecture of Teams is SharePoint is behind the scenes. And there are many instances where a user has access to files in a team, but they're not a member and they're not an owner of that team. And it is really tricky to track down where that happens. It happens for lots of reasons. It could be that like Joe and I are on a project, and she says, "Hey, could you share that amazing PowerPoint presentation you did for that customer?" And I'm saying, "Absolutely, Joy. I'm happy to share that with you." And I click that little share button up at the top of the PowerPoint. I click on Joanne's name. I have now created a direct sharing link, and I have sent that to her. Now, let's say Joanne gets promoted because she's amazing and goes off to do bigger and better things. I remove her from being a member of that team. Guess what? She still has access to that file that I shared directly with her. And as you can see in the screen here, that is what AvePoint calls shadow users and groups, where the permissions, membership of the team does not match the permissions of the files underneath.
Mm.
And you can drill into that and see, teams that have these shadow users. So when you think about where there might be oversharing, this is a pretty popular place to go take a peek. And certainly an area where we see a lot of oversharing that has to get remediated before you go investing in Copilot, or just from overall
Mhm.
just good data practice, data management perspective. Cool. That showed just a little bit about what we do and the value we do, and kind of how we build off of those same sensitive information types
Yeah.
and sensitivity labels that you
Yeah.
configure in Purview. We don't it's not disconnected. This is a connected
Yeah.
experience.
I think it demonstrates too the importance of that data classification. That's kind of thing one to kind of get in place and make sure it's as accurate as possible. And if you have to build custom sits, you have to build custom sits to address that. I love the
Mm.
heat map on this solution from AppPoint.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's
It's
pretty
really
close.
good.
I would love to take credit for it, but I think our product team are the true heroes in this
Yeah,
scenario.
it's helpful.
Cool. So we talked about finding problems, but what's the fun in finding problems if you don't fix the problems? Because that's really what we want to do to be able to move forward
Yeah.
with these Copilot pilots. And
Hmm.
kind of the genesis of I would say remediation is really about cleaning up permissions, right, for those underlying files. It's also addressing public sharing governance. I didn't really dig into it too much, but really, if you think about it, Microsoft Teams, the collaboration hub, so if a team is public, everybody has access to it. That is, the everyone except external users
Yeah.
how has access to the files within that team. If you
Mm.
ask Copilot a question, it can access those public teams. So making sure you have a good handle on public sharing governance, and the teams that you have set to public should be public and not shouldn't be private. And as Joanne mentioned, right, it's also about sensitivity and classification alignment, making sure that your sensitive data is classified with appropriate labeling and protection policies to ensure that you are safe. So I think I'm going to pass it back to you, Joanne, for a cool
All
demo.
right. Data remediation. Yeah, this is a big one. Can you forward? I can't remember the next slide. There. Okay. So I mean, there are a plethora of Purview solutions that can come at this from different angles, but the one of the very important and basic things to have in place and to understand is to once data is classified on your sensitive data that's truly a true positive on sensitive information is to use the sensitivity label ideally that applies a level of encryption to control the access, who has access to that and what they can do with that document. And this is just a screen print of the setting that one of the settings that can do that. I'm assigning permissions on this sensitivity label or within the sensitivity label so that when it's applied to content, it encrypts it with certain users. So in here, I've likely selected the all users and groups in the organization for this domain. And you can see I've also given them a certain permission level, reviewer. So you control kind of those two key aspects in a sensitivity label. This is a great way to clamp down on oversharing, because if something had this sensitivity label on it and it was accidentally shared externally, let's say, even if when that external person tried to open it, they would get an access denied. They would be prevented from doing so. So this is one of those very important controls that an organization can have in place. Now, to be clear, defining your sensitivity label taxonomy and figuring out, which ones are going to apply encryption in there, and then deploying them across your organization and getting them applied on content, that's a significant project in and of itself. Lots of parties need to be involved in this. It has a big end user impact. So organizational change management needs to be involved, training, all of those kinds of things. So um, this is, an important thing to do, but it is a very kind of big, far-reaching, impactful thing to do as well, because your most tenants have lots of files, millions of files, and this can affect a lot of your content when you're deploying this. So, but it is a very important control. And then this sensitivity label, of course, can be used with other Purview controls, that definitely affect Copilot, because Copilot needs certain rights in that permissions in order to process that content, extract and view are the specific rights it needs. But what you have defined in here has a direct impact on Copilot's ability to process the content that has the label applied. Another many ways to get a sensitivity label on content, and one of these ways is to do it automatically, right when an end user is working with the content. That seems to be a good place to do it. That's one of the ways you can do it. So here's just an example of some sensitive information types, just using the built-in ones that Microsoft has. And on the bottom, you can see I'm automatically applying a label. So that's right in the moment when an end user is, composing an email or composing a new Word document or Excel document. It's looking for that sensitive information. So it's kind of running a classification, if you will, on the fly. And then it will do whatever you're suggesting it does here if it finds a match on any of those conditions. So it's a great way of applying a sensitivity label based on a classification, which is what I'm showing here. There's other ways to do this, of course, with auto labeling policies where an end user doesn't have to be involved, or the new on-demand classification that will really go back in time and deal with cold data. So take away from this is there's lots of ways to get a sensitivity label on content, but once it's on there, the settings you have in that label have a big impact on Copilot's ability to process it.
Got it. Cool.
Not in Purview, but a very honorable mention here is SharePoint Advanced Management, because it adds additional guardrails that speak to this exact problem that we're talking about. And on this list of advanced management capabilities, there's a few of them I want to call out here. The first is, if you just want to click through here, block download policies. So that will make it so that on a SharePoint site or OneDrive, you can make it so you can't, you have to browse it from the web, you can't, uh, you have web only access. So you can't print, download, sync, do anything like that. Um, you can do that without having a conditional access policy. You can also apply conditional access policies on SharePoint sites. Maybe you want to require MFA or require terms of use if it's a sensitive site. Site level access restriction, you can actually control the members and owners, site access to just the members and owners of a group. And the last but not least one is the data access governance reports. that really, there's a couple reports they have on there that expose potential oversharing, that um, site owners can then take action on, if necessary. Um, Now I'm going to go back to this data assessment report. Remember, I was talking about that on the data discovery piece. On the remediation piece, there's a number of things that the DSPM for AI solution can help you with or suggest that you do. Now, this does not preclude you from understanding what all of these other Purview features and capabilities are. There's a lot to unpack on each one of these, and you might already and likely do already have some of these in place. But once you drill down to a site in those sites that are listed in your data risk assessment, you can do all of these things right from there. Some are like you have to do through PowerShell. Some will be automatic. Some will just take you to the Purview solution for you to configure. Some will configure the Purview solution, maybe in audit mode or simulation mode. And then you can go over there and tweak it accordingly. But it's meant to kind of fast path some remediation actions on these risky sites. I think I have a next slide. Yeah. So one of the ways you can do it, let's say, the top three sites you have listed here, you're like, oh, we don't want Copilot to have any access whatsoever to these sites. Well, you can use a feature called restricted content discoverability to basically stop the site from being discoverable by Copilot. But also know that this hamstrings org-wide search as well for all users. So it's not a zero-sum game there. Um, but it is a control that you perhaps want to have on your very highly sensitive sites. Certainly, you may want to back off of that once you feel like you have, your permissions under control and your oversharing under control. But it is a very good way to just stop Copilot immediately from accessing a site that you deem to be highly sensitive.
Perfect. Wow. So yeah, there's definitely it sounds like doing a lot of different ways
Oh yeah,
to sort of address it.
yeah,
Um, and it's funny. I'm glad you brought up the fact that these data classification projects are bigger than just AI.
yeah.
So AI is the only reason why you would do this. But also just being upfront honest that these are long projects. They take a long time.
Huh.
There's a lot of stakeholders that
Yes.
have to be engaged to be able to agree on, well, what labels you define, what are some of the policies that you
Yeah.
might create that associate with those labels,
Yeah.
piloting that, getting feedback, iterating
Yes.
on.
Yeah.
And what I think is tough, and we've heard this from some of our customers that, you know, to get into being a good spot from a data classification perspective, especially with some of our larger customers, they're talking in years
Yeah.
and not months. And
Mhm.
that can be tough, right? Because you're trying to make progress and trying to experiment with AI, you're trying to keep up with
Yeah.
the Joneses,
Yeah.
but you're also trying to not find yourself on the cover of the Wall Street Journal about
Yeah.
whatever breach happens, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of that interesting. And the thing that I go to, and I think about, and the challenge that I'm seeing with some of the data classification is you're not really addressing permissions with where the files sit.
No.
You're instead really saying we have to encrypt every file, which in itself could be potentially could be part of it, right? Potentially encrypting a lot of your documents, which to your point could be a heavy change management exercise as well,
Yes.
because as you know, right, files don't just stay internal; they also tend to go external as well. Like, and again,
Yeah.
but it could be all over the place. So
Yes.
it's an interesting complex problem, which makes
Yeah.
it a fun topic for a webinar.
Yeah. Very, very, very much so. And I do wanna call out Microsoft is coming out with some blueprints to help with this very complex problem. So this is the secure by default blueprint speaks to what you're talking about, and there's also an AI blueprint, I forget the official name of it, but it's talking about these controls that we're
Yeah,
speaking of here. And you're right, it is not it's not a trivial undertaking, but there are steps to take fairly quickly to get you in a better position. So you don't have to spend 18 months before you can do step one. There's gradual things you can do.
perfect. So, all right, I'll show you a little bit of kind of take you around the horn of what we can do from the AvePoint platform as well. So, again, we are a SaaS-based platform. We connect to your tenants, and we have recognized that security tends to be something you do in layers. And one of the layers that we like to attack first is really those collaboration workspaces, the SharePoint sites, the Teams, the OneDrives. And we have pre-built policies that you can apply to your tenant and do things that'll help you, steps that you can take to get you, kind of ready for AI. And just to kind of to show off just a couple out of the box, we've got the ability to set access request restrictions. We can restrict the number of owners of a particular team. And obviously, the less owners you have, less people you have making permission changes. We can check the privacy restriction of teams, making sure that your teams are set to private instead of public. And if we find that they've been flipped, we will flip them back and let people know. We also have the ability to remove those shadow users. So, where you have that mismatch between the team's membership and the underlying files in that team, we can identify those shadow users or groups and remove them from having access. So, update the permissions of that particular container. Now, one policy that I would like to call out because I have found this to be a great way to reduce and curb oversharing in your tenants is really the honey pot of OneDrive, which there's a ton of oversharing in OneDrive, but
Mhm.
also the ability that folks have to share files out with the entire organization. Now, again, here's another scenario. Me and Joanne are working together, and it's just, hey, like that Word doc you're working on, could you send that to me? 100% happy to do that. And I go, all right, share, and I start to type in Joanne's name, but then I go, wait a second. I know Joanne. Joanne's gonna love my work so much that she's gonna want to go ahead and share that particular file with Tom. Maybe she'll want to share that with Caesar. And then what'll happen is when Tom and Caesar go to get that link, I'm gonna get one of those access request emails because they are not someone that I shared the file with directly. To me, that's wicked annoying. So instead, I'm just saying like, hey, like everyone in AvePoint can have access to this file. Now, in that little sharing dialogue, if I wanted to, I could say, yeah, I'll share that with them for 15 days, 30 days, set an expiration. Do I do that? Absolutely not. Who's going to take that extra step? I don't do it. We can create a policy that looks for those sharing links and we can expire them. We can set an expiration date on behalf of your users that would are just gonna be super happy that you do that. And so you can do it for 30 days, you can do it for 15 days, you can define what that is. Now, will that break permissions? Yes, it will. Is that a good thing? Yes, that is, because most circumstances, those files should not be shared with the entire organization. Now, if I expire a sharing link and Tom goes to access it later, guess what Tom's going to do? Tom will do an access request and I will get that email. I will roll my eyes, but I will only share that file then with Tom. And that will help you to curb some of that overshare. Now, you might be like, well, hold on, Jared. That sounds like marketing speak. Like that can't be that easy. Can't be that set it and forget it. And like, how do we stagger this change out so we do not impact the entire organization and have lots of people that are upset that we've expired a whole bunch of sharing links? Well, a very cool concept we have introduced in AvePoint is containers. We allow you to virtualize aspects of your tenant. You can create containers underneath every one of your services, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive. You can start to separate out these site collections, these teams into their own separate containers. You can start with IT, let IT start to test this out, get a feel for what that impact is, and then you can scale that up, right? So if you want to avoid impacting your finance department at quarter end close, which we all want to do because they get very grumpy when you impact them at quarter end, you can do that, right? So leveraging containers, you can scope policies, apply to a container, and then boom, that's how you start to address some of that oversharing. Now, another differentiator, and so again, I want to call it out, whether it be in Purview, whether it be SAM, whether it be our competitors, where AvePoint is different is we bring the insights of where there's risk down to the actual business data owners, the people that are creating the problems. Now we'll have visibility to start to participate in remediation. You can access it through Microsoft Teams. There's obviously a web interface as well. This gives them visibility. Where are their shadow users? Where are their high risk items in this particular team? Where might there be guest users? And gives them the ability to go ahead and participate. It's the shared accountability model that we have as AvePoint. And you could also assign them tasks where they provide additional business context. How long do we need this thing for? What's the type of data that we'll be collaborating in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, a key differentiator and really a key enabler of on not just remediation but ongoing governance is helping to invite your users in who ultimately own the data. So again, thought I'd just kind of give you a quick preview as to what we do from an AvePoint perspective to really address issues with permissions at the container level. So moving on in the interest of time, data quality. So
Mm.
again, Joe talked about it earlier. An important aspect of getting ready for AI is about identifying your redundant, outdated, and trivial data.
Mhm.
Finding these problems is one thing, but it's really then about how do you action upon that? How might
Yep.
you archive or delete that route data so that you reduce your risk, you improve your AI quality of responses, and ideally, you do it in a way that you don't create a new problem or a
Good.
new venue for users to submit help desk tickets of, I thought I had my piece of cheese in that particular nested folder and it is now gone.
Yeah.
So here's what we're trying to solve for. Joy, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk a little about how Purview helps from a data quality perspective.
All right. Yeah, so this part of Microsoft Purview is data lifecycle management and records management. And what you're seeing here is data lifecycle management and the idea of a retention policy that can be set up to retain and delete, or just simply delete. So those are some examples that I see with customers. And the idea behind it is it works at a container level. By container, I mean a OneDrive site or a SharePoint site or a user's Teams chats, all of them, or a Microsoft 365 group. So you can set controls at that level um, to, I guess, get at the fringes of trying to remove redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. Now, I just want to say this alone is not enough, and I would never suggest you do this. Perhaps for Teams chats, I would, but for SharePoint, certainly, or Microsoft 365 groups, I wouldn't do this without also employing records management and some of those more granular retention labels. If you want to go to the next slide like this. So, if you reach out to your records management team in your organization, they would not be happy if you just employed a retention policy that's going to delete all your SharePoint files after 5 years of them not being accessed. I mean, that would certainly be a way of reducing your data footprint, but that is a huge risk in and of itself. So you also have to address the regulatory requirements your organization must have. So these two controls in place really reduce the rot while ensuring you're retaining your records of value, which then feeds into your overall data quality. Keeping everything forever is not a good thing. The more data you have, the more data you must protect, the more data you have to um, surface in if you have a freedom of information request. So there's just a whole boatload of problems that come with not getting rid of anything. But you also have to do it in a very thoughtful and planned out manner. So similar to employing sensitivity labels that some may apply encryption, this is also a fairly big project and months and even years to do this end to end completely. So, little sidebar on the data risk assessment. One of the things that is suggested is for a particular site, deploy a retention policy to retain for 3 years. I think that's what it is. I don't think there's any delete action on it, which is good, but, that's just scratching the surface. I wouldn't do that just in, isolation. I would also kind of look at the whole big picture of the complete, life cycle management of all of your content. Some of it you'll be able to safely delete, but not all of it.
Got it. Oh, that's super helpful. So really it's the kind of the two main actions are the keep and delete, right? That's
Yeah,
technically what
yeah,
most organizations
that's right.
have. And got it, got it, got it. What we do And again, from an AvePoint perspective, there's a couple ways of addressing it as well.
Yeah.
But the one that we have seen the most success with is going ahead and we scan that metadata of the files that exist within your tenant, and we can allow you to configure what you believe to be redundant, outdated, and trivial data. Is it files haven't been touched in a couple years, legacy Office files, maybe files that shouldn't even be in Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
Maybe these are files that can't be labeled because there are some file extensions that don't support labeling. We will help you to identify how much of that data in your tenant across SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive is route. We give you a little sort of different type of heat map. It's more of a file extension heat map, so you can see sort of what makes up that route data, and then you're able to create policies. Again, once again, targeting containers in your tenant, and you have the ability to either delete, which is great, getting rid of that older content or that content maybe shouldn't be there is good. But we've also found that there are many organizations that have concerns around just wholeheartedly deleting.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to call them hoarders, but there are definitely people that like to retain
Yeah.
content for a while, and it makes them use a little bit of agita if they're thinking about deleting. So a step that we enable or allow for is archival. Now, I know you start talking about archive, there's M365 archive, and that's kind of
Yeah.
outside the scope of this webinar. But that is really at the team or the site level. The container level is what
Yeah.
allows for archive, and that's more of an admin function. What we allow for is archiving at the document level, or even at the version level of a document to free up some storage if you're kind of reaching your limit. And again, one of the cool like differentiators of what we're doing from an archive perspective is we can give your end users visibility into that and the ability, if you choose, to either rehydrate. You take that file back from that cold storage location, usually Azure Blob Storage or an Amazon S3 bucket, and they can bring it back to where it was. They can put it back in that SharePoint site in that team, or they could also export that file out locally, and therefore, it's for reference purposes or whatever that particular use case is. So a couple of options. They can search for those files if they want to go see like where that is. Or they could also navigate a tree like structure if there's someone that has that muscle memory of I know that file is sitting a
Mhm.
couple folders deep. Uh, both options are available in terms of like retrieval. Therefore, you're not creating a new thing for IT to have to manage. There's no new ticketing process for this. It's that users can self-service bring that back. So again, this is how one of the ways that we address data quality, as well as kind of
Mhm.
curbing some of that oversharing of sensitive information. All right. We got a little bit more time. I think we'll touch on one more kind of key concept, which is workspace management. So really about workspace management, these are the SharePoint sites, these are the teams. And what you want to do is ensure that the owners of those teams and those sites are
Mhm.
testing, but yeah, I still need this thing. I
Mhm.
still need this team. I still need this site. Can't go away just yet. And
Yeah.
really capture a little bit of that business context as to what that site or team is for.
Mhm.
This might be an opportunity too when you think about doing data cleanup of enabling your end users to look at and having them look at their OneDrive, see where there might be some oversharing in their OneDrive or some bad permissioning there. And then finally, you might want to use this as an opportunity to figure out what is your go forward strategy? How you enable secure provisioning and lifecycle management after the fact. So,
Mhm.
all right, Joy, I think I'll let you do a little bit of driving here
All right.
around Herbie and Sam.
Okay, so there's again a number of ways that Microsoft addresses this. Some from Purview, some from SharePoint Advanced Management. Um, and these are controls that have been around for a while and are important to get a handle on whether you're talking about AI or not. But from an external sharing, i.e., oversharing perspective, there's controls you can do at the tenant level. Some you can do holistically across SharePoint OneDrive, which is what we're showing here in the SharePoint Admin Center, to identify the level of sharing that can happen and who you could share that with. But an additional, more granular control is having a sensitivity label that is scoped to sites and groups. And that allows for once that label is applied to a site, not to a file, but to the container site itself, it can apply very site specific controls based on that sensitivity label. So you can imagine if you had a highly confidential um, site sensitivity label, you might want to control, no guests allowed and no external sharing allowed, those types of things. I think if you go to the next screen. Yeah, so these are the things you can control um, in a container sensitivity label that speak exactly to oversharing and the sensitivity of the activities and actions that are going to be allowed on that site. This is I know Jared talked at the beginning about private and public sites. This is one purview control that can control that. If you set up site privacy to be private, then once that sensitivity label is applied to a site, you can't change it off of private because it's inextricably linked to the sensitivity label that's applied to that site. Um, what I like about this is sensitivity labels allow it so not all of your sites are treated the same because they're not all the same. You'll have some that are very open in general and some that are going to be confidential. So that's the control that this provides. The next screen is I want to call out two different policies that are in site lifecycle management. Again, this is a SharePoint Advanced Management feature. That speak to the life cycle of your sites. One is the inactivity of a site. People, move on. Maybe the site isn't required anymore. So you can have a notification sent to the site owners or admins of that inactivity. And then what do you want to do with this site? Does it have business records on there? No, or doesn't it? Can we just get rid of it? Should we archive it? Should we turn it read only? I mean, you have some options there. Site ownership policy is, I know Jared talked about this before from AvePoint. Microsoft allows you to set a minimum number of owners. So it might be we require 2 owners or 3 owners per site. If it dips below that, then a notification can be sent to, hey, you need to have at least 2 or 3 owners here. If not, after a period of time that you define, that site's gonna be set to read only. That will surely get the attention of the people that are on that site, so that's how that is addressed. So 2 really important controls to get ahead of sites. If you have, a whole bunch of sites in your environment, many aren't being used, this is kinda help you on an ongoing basis, kind of once you've dealt with them, keeping things kind of up to date and making sure you're managing that life cycle and that they don't sit dormant forever.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Joanne. So I'll go kind of quickly into what
Okay.
we do from an outpoint perspective, and then I
Okay.
think we'll, in interest of time, we'll take her home. So
Okay.
what we're doing, right, from an halfway perspective, we've got that end user facing view. So we're able to enable provisioning. So instead of people saying, hey, let me create a new site, create a new team, and create all this sprawl, you can actually run provisioning through our platform. And through that, you can decide different approval processes, you can force naming standards, you can capture
Mm,
business context. What's the sensitivity of this file? What's the nature of collaboration? How long do you need this for? And then based on the input of your users, you can align policies that make sense to ensure that you do not have configuration drift, that things do not change over time, and
mm,
that you can maintain that governance going forward, that lifecycle management.
yeah.
You can assign tasks to your business data owners to confirm that what they said a couple months ago, a couple years ago, still makes sense, and that they
Mm,
are the correct owners for that particular collaboration container. We can also take that experience down to OneDrive, and we have just rolled out this ability for, admins to be able to assign tasks to users. Hey, go ahead and clean up your OneDrive. Like if you want that fancy shiny
mm,
Copilot license, like you're gonna have to go double check your permission sharing links that you have not enabled too many people to have access to any of that sensitive data.
yeah.
And once they've completed that check in, then they can get their license. So again, gives users a visibility, cuts through that scrolling that they might have to do to
Yeah.
really identify, here are the risky items.
Yeah.
Here are those large sharing links. Here's where you might have external users with access, and then gives them the ability to take action, to be aware of the risk, and to participate in that cleanup. Shifting from this being an IT problem to being
Yeah.
IT enabling your users to participate in the remediation and the oversharing.
I love that. OneDrive is a huge data risk all up.
a huge
Yeah.
data risk across all pretty much
Yeah.
all organizations.
Yeah.
So, in sen we wanted to cover a whole bunch more, but for what we've got, I think to sort of bring it home, and I think you and I will kind of riff on this one because it's a little bit fun. I do think there is a better together story, right? Like, I do think there are elements that Purview does that I know for us as AvePoint do not touch, right? You don't create DLP policies in AvePoint, you create them in Purview, right? Joanne, you showed some of that automatic classification as an option. There's also the ability to look for insider risk management. We even talk about insider risk, but that's a
No, we
huge
didn't talk about
right,
it. But
right,
that's a huge part of this, definitely. Yeah.
right,
What indicates an inside risk? What's a user's risk level? What are they doing with AI and with other things across our environment? A huge part of this, yes.
totally. And I think you can hopefully see like where we're bringing value from an AvePoint perspective.
Yeah.
We are really about business governance, including data owners to participate in remediation. We're capturing business context that that it's not just this random site collection name. We actually know we have metadata that we collect so you can make intelligent decisions. For us, it's really about fixing permissions. We can also apply sensitivity labels. There's policies that enable us to create risk-based classification, but you can also leverage purview for that. Kind of either or depends on your scenarios. We are also very much focused on workspace management, so ensuring that the data owners are checking permissions, are participating in governance, and everything we do is built on Microsoft APIs. So again, a whole bunch of content. An hour, I knew wouldn't be able to fully contain it.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of resources that will get sent out for you to be able to access more information, more slides, more content. Joy, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, to share, to collaborate. This is a lot of fun. Hopefully, everyone got a little something out of this. Hopefully, everyone understands kind of how two solutions come together to holistically make you secure, not just for AI, but for all just general data security, data governance. I
Awesome.
don't know, Jim. Closing words, closing thoughts.
Yeah, this is a complex topic. Obviously, I think we hit on some key points, maybe not everything that you need to consider, but I like the better together story. Workspace management. There's no built-in site provisioning solution where you can customize your own requirements, which is a common requirement, by the way, in order to automate some of these controls. So it's definitely a better together story. Each are strong products. So yeah, it was fun to go through this. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you.